intersection of making art and making money. Hi, and welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm episode 107. I'm Tara Swiger. I help makers and artists feel awesome about their business. And one of the ways we do that is talk about how you can be and have a business that you want to have while being yourself. And part of that, for many of us crafters and makers, is related to being an introvert. So a few weeks ago, I read a book I really loved, and I loved it so much that I wanted to share it with you and also share the lessons that I found in this book with you. So today, I'm going to be sharing 3 big lessons that I took from the book, The Introvert Entrepreneur, and I'm also giving away a copy. So keep listening for me to tell you how to enter to win a copy, my copy of The Introvert Entrepreneur. So if you have been reading my blog or website for any amount of time, you will, which you can find at taraswiger.com/blog, then you probably know that every month I share my reading list there, the books that I read in the last month, the books that I'm in the middle reading, and I give like 1 to 2 sentences of like a really quick explanation of what the book was about. But I wanted to do more with this book because it was so aligned with what I teach, and there are so many things in it that I was like, that's what I teach. Or, oh my goodness, I've had this exact same conversation with people that I wanted to do a bigger discussion. So although I talked about it, I think in the May What I'm Reading post, I also wanted to get deeper with it today. So we're going to talk about 3 big lessons that I took from the book. And I'm going to give away this book, my copy of the book. So I mostly get my books from the library, but my mom bought me this book. She saw it in the bookstore and thought of me. And so I loved it, but I know that somebody else could get even more out of it. So to enter to win this copy of the book, which I haven't written in it or anything, but I have read it, so it has been read, go to the show notes for this very podcast episode, which you can find at taraswiger.com/podcast107. It will have links to everything we talked about today, including if you just want to buy a copy or you want to get an Audible or Kindle copy. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that post, at the bottom will be a box. Put in your email address where it says enter to win the Introvert Entrepreneur, and you'll be entered to win. As long as you do it by May 24th, 2016, which is when I'm recording this episode. If you're listening later, then you can just go get your own copy of the book. But do it by May 24th, and you'll be entered to win a copy of the book. And you're also going to get all of the bonuses that subscribers get, like podcast transcripts, free worksheets and schedules and checklists, and you'll get the free weekly lessons I send. So you can get all of that when you subscribe at the bottom at taraswiger.com/podcast107. That's the form you have to use to be entered in this particular book giveaway. That's how I'll know you want this book. And on May 25th, I will draw a name and email the winner. So before we get into the lessons from the Introvert Entrepreneur, we need to talk about what I mean by introvert. So it's really simple, and I've talked about this in past episodes about like social media for introverts, marketing for introverts. I've done a lot of episodes for introverts because those tend to be some of my most popular. And so many of you say, oh my goodness, it's awesome to know I can be an introvert and have a business. So an introvert gets their energy from being by themselves, and an extrovert gets their energy by being with other people. Now, these words have different definitions depending on like what we're talking about. Like the Myers-Briggs tests has different definitions, but for what we're talking about, and keep in mind when you're talking to other people about it, they might have totally different ideas about what the word means. But for our conversation, introvert gets energy by being alone, and extrovert gets energy by being with other people. And everyone is on a spectrum from super extroverted, love to be with people, woo, it just like fills me up with energy when I'm with people, to super introverted, being with people at all completely wears me out. But everybody's on the spectrum, and most of us are more in the center than we are off to the sides. So that's good to know. I think the reason why introverts feel like weirdos, even though everybody is on that spectrum, is because, especially if you live in America, it's a very extroverted society. And a book that talks a lot more about this is Quiet by Susan Cain. I think the subtitle is How to Be Introverted in a Noisy World, or How to Be Quiet in a Noisy World. Anyhow, the book's called Quiet by Susan Cain. Super good, well-researched, talks about introverts specifically in some settings, like in America and in school and even in church, what it's like to be an introvert in some extroverted settings. It really helped me understand this a lot. But so most of us are on the spectrum. So you will get energy, you know, either from being alone or from being with people, but it's not necessarily super severe. Like, oh my goodness, I can never be with anyone, right? As you guys probably know, I teach in front of groups of people. I go to events with big groups of people, and I have a really great time when I'm there. But that isn't energy filling, it's energy depleting. So then I need to go back and be by myself in order to get filled back up with energy. So it doesn't mean you hate groups of people or even that you hate people or that you can't stand in front of people. It simply means that that does take energy away from you. Okay? So most people need both. You definitely need human interaction and deep connections in order to thrive and be mentally healthy. So just because you like being by yourself doesn't mean you don't like being with anybody else. The other thing that came up on Periscope is people asked me if like about being shy and being introverted. So there's a difference between being shy and being introverted. Being introverted is you get energy by being by yourself, and being shy. And I've researched this less than introversion, but here's my working definition: is that it's when you feel anxiety about meeting people or being with people or having to talk in front of people. And so I'm an introvert. Like it wears me out to be with big groups of people for long periods of time and to not be by myself. And yet I don't have that much anxiety about meeting new people. Now, I definitely did as a kid. I had a lot of anxiety about meeting new people or being in groups of people. And it's like with anything, the more you practice it, the better you get and the less anxiety inducing it is. So through the course of having my business and wanting to meet people through my business, I have dramatically reduced my anxiety. So I'm not nearly as shy now. And then there's also this other thing about being introverted extroversion that people don't kind of get, and that's that you can be introverted and still be really talkative and really friendly. So like it wears me out to be with people, but when I'm with people, I'm super friendly. And I, as you might have guessed from listening to my podcast, super chatty person. I have lots to say. I have no problem saying it. I can be the person who comes up and says hello if the situation calls for it. And yet, doing that drains my energy, right? But it's not that I hate it or that I'm not good at it. It's just simply not, it doesn't fill me up in the way that for extroverts, being around people fills them up. And the best way I found to understand this is to just think about the difference between me and an extrovert. For example, my husband is slightly more extroverted than I am. He's more on the side of the spectrum for extroversion. He loves spending time alone and being with me and just chilling at home with our puppies. But if we spend a weekend all at home, not really doing anything out of the house or with people, he gets really antsy. And by like Sunday, he'll feel drained from not having been with more people. So this is why him working at the comic book shop is so awesome, because he gets interaction with people. And by the time we're done with our work days, he's had lots of interaction and I've had very little, except for maybe Periscope. And so we're right at the right level to then hang out with each other. But if he had been alone all day and I had been alone all day, at the end of the day, he would want to go out and do things, or he would be like really talkative and want a bunch of interaction with me. And so that's kind of how we know the difference, is that he will feel tired if we spend a whole day not going out, and I will feel rested and wonderful. And if we do go out all day, I will feel tired and he will feel just like normal, just like good. Okay? So that's how we're going to talk about the difference between introversion and extroversion. Now, like I said, most people need both, and many people fall more in the middle than on the two extremes. Now, the Introvert Entrepreneur, which, by the way, is by Beth Buelow. I'm going to refer to her as the author, or just Beth. I mean, I don't know her, but I feel like after reading somebody's book, you're kind of friends with them. So the Introvert Entrepreneur says that introverts also have these other things in common, which makes sense if you think about getting energy from being by yourself. So she says they tend to think carefully before speaking or acting. They enjoy introspection. They have a few deep, close relationships and friendships, and they are self-reliant and self-possessed. Which, if you think about it, if you enjoy spending time by yourself, it would make sense that you're self-reliant, self-possessed, you're cool by yourself, you're okay by yourself, you can rely on yourself, you're used to yourself, you do a lot of thinking on your own. And one of the things that I found with introversion, extroversion, is that introverts, and this is related to introspection, have They tend to think through things, while extroverts often talk through things. They often need to bounce their ideas off people before they end on an idea, and she talks about this a bit in the first chapter, whereas introverts tend to need to think through it quietly in their own head. So if you're in a conversation or a meeting with both extroverts and introverts, the extroverts will be having all their ideas out loud and moving forward, and the introvert won't say anything until they've thought it through, and that often leads to the introvert not putting in as much input. And it's not, extroverts might think it's because the introverts don't have thoughts or are afraid to share them. It's rather that they prefer to think them entirely through before sharing them. And the extrovert is thinking it through as sharing it. That's the way they think it through. So those are some of the other things introverts may have in common. You might feel yourself have some of those things in common, or maybe not so much. But I've recorded a whole series of podcast episodes in the For Introverts series. So there's traveling for introverts, craft shows for introverts, marketing for introverts, social media for introverts, and a couple more. I'm going to link to them all in the show notes of this podcast, which you'll find at taraswiger.com/podcast 107. So we cover all those different topics. If you want to dive into this deeper, I do even more explanation of how to apply it to very specific situations. Oh, including like networking and meeting new people. Now, what I learned from this book, even after I have talked and podcasted about introverts for probably about the last year or so, is a couple things. So the first lesson, I'm going to share with you 3 lessons. Lesson 1 is this quote that she says right in chapter 1, which is, for introverts, our energy is our most precious asset. We have to be sure we're spending it on pursuits that move us in the direction that's most important to us. Yes, I read that and I was like, oh my goodness, yes. I realized when I was reading that sentence that idea of your energy being your most precious asset is why I talk and teach so much about defining success for yourself and then setting goals and working with focus on your goals. It's because of my own introversion that I've realized that I need to manage my energy kind of above everything else. So I don't just worry about managing my time or managing my money or managing my resources. I need to manage my energy, because if I'm depleted, because I've done too much group activity stuff, I'm not going to be able to work on the things I want to work on. And so I need introspection time, I need quiet time in order to work on these bigger projects. And that includes like teaching in person or teaching on Creative Live or putting together a bigger project, just like putting together a class. So my introversion has taught me that my energy is limited and I want to spend it in the best way possible. And that has become a through line in everything I teach, right? So I talk about goal setting and defining success for yourself, specifically because I assume if my energy is limited, your energy is limited. And therefore the best way for you to get to the business you want is to spend time only on the things that matter and to save up your energy for those things. So in chapter 2, Beth talks about breaking your goals into doable chunks and actions, which you guys might recognize as what I call the map making system. And you can find the map making guide at taraswiger.com/map, but that's exactly a process I walk you through. She also talks about it in chapter 2. She talks about it as a form of both managing your energy and defeating fear and overwhelm. So when you're really afraid or when you're feeling really overwhelmed, if you take a project and you break it down into chunks, it becomes more doable and less frightening. So in other words, it's easy to see a project you want to do as just really overwhelming and to only think about it in those terms of overwhelmingness. And she writes about how she thinks that this is more of an introvert trait. This is something that introverts have in common. But by breaking it up into doable chunks, which is something that when you're feeling overwhelmed, you kind of forget to do, that means you only need to focus on the chunk in front of you. So instead of exhausting your energy trying to do everything, you just focus on the chunk in front of you. So for introverts who often like having thought of everything ahead of time, right? Remember we said that they tend to think things through before they speak them or before they share them. So for people who like to think everything through ahead of time, this process of breaking projects down into smaller chunks can make everything have a lot more ease and a lot more peace for you because you've like thought it through, you know what's coming, you've made a plan. And I found that this is what helps introverts and crafters and makers and artists feel less freaked out by what it is they want to do. Because they're big picture thinkers, but just the act of breaking it down is like, okay, I've thought this through, I can do this. And I know that's definitely true for me. I need to feel like I've thought something through before I want to go through with it at all. An example is that we need a new car. My car is really old and starting to fall apart. And, but I haven't been able to pull the trigger yet because I need to feel like it's even more planned out. So even though finances, talking, research, it's something that my husband is ready to pull the trigger on and I'm still waiting for, because I need a plan. I need to know I've given it all the thought it needs. It's definitely an introvert quality, and definitely something you can use in your business to make good plans for your business. But it's kind of funny when I was reading this, when I read specifically that sentence in the book, because I have known the process of map making, which again is taking a big goal and breaking it down into doable chunks and actions. It definitely worked for me when I outlined it over 5 years ago because some students were asking me about it. And then over the last years, I think I've had it for sale over 5 years, I have seen it work for many, many people have shared that it's helped them actually take action in their business. And I've done a lot of research and reading about goal setting and motivation and defeating overwhelm. So I knew it worked for all of those reasons, for actually making your goal doable and helping you see the plan so you could take action. But it didn't occur to me that it also might be working because of these traits of introverts, because of this trait of needing to manage your energy and needing to plot things out and plan things and think things through ahead of time. So reading that, I was just like, that's fantastic. So I want you to keep that in mind. As an introvert, one of your most precious resources, and I would argue this is true of everybody, but I think introverts feel this more deeply, you need to manage your energy. In other words, you need to not wear yourself out. And part of managing your energy is knowing that you're working on what matters and letting go of everything else. So the reason why breaking down your goals or the map making process works is because it gives you permission to do just the things you need to do right now to move forward and let go of the everything else. Because the thinking and the introspecting and the reviewing the everything else is part of what's sucking up your energy. And also trying to do too many things at once sucks up your energy. So you want to focus in on the things that really matter, that both matter to you and matter towards getting there, and just do that. You have permission to let everything else go. Okay, so lesson 2 from the Introvert Entrepreneur is that self-reflection is a superpower. So if you're an introvert, then you probably feel comfortable with this reflection. You probably spend a lot of time thinking things through or reflecting on something before you made a decision. And the extroverts in your life may hassle you about it because they expect an answer right away, because they think things through kind of publicly and out loud, and they come to conclusions a little bit faster. But the good news is this is a superpower. This reflection can be super helpful in building a business you want. So one mistake that people make with their business is that they just blah. They just go at it like shotgun approach and just do all the things, right? I got to start a Pinterest account, a Twitter account. I need to start a blog. Why don't I have a podcast? I should also be periscoping. I got to get an Etsy shop and a Shopify shop and a Squarespace website. And they do all of the things that they see everyone else doing. And without thinking through, what is the business I want? Without asking themselves what really matters to them, they just go at everything. So that can wear you out. However, if you are one for self-reflection, you probably have already realized, you're probably already doing it this yourself, where you're thinking through, what is it I want in this situation? Does this tool work for me? Does it not work for me? So you're thinking through your decisions before you just feel like the need to go do them. You actually process it a little bit more. That can be a good thing because it keeps you from, again, wasting your energy on things that are going to wear you out. So what's interesting when I was thinking about this is the way that I teach and structure classes is based on an introvert's love of self-reflection. And I've actually had extroverts say, the way you ask us all of these questions about our own business is the first time I've ever thought about it like this. And one person specifically told me I'm an extrovert, and so your worksheets where I'm supposed to think it through myself don't really work for me. I need to talk it out with somebody else. So the way she went through my classes is having a discussion. What's great about when I teach live is because all of these worksheets, which are aimed at helping you reflect on your own business, People sit there and fill them out on their own, and they just are thinking in their own head. And the extroverts in class always speak up and want to talk them out with me. And that's how they get to their answers. So it's really great in person because we can do both. But even when you're taking an online class and you have all these worksheets, you can talk them out with someone. And that's often what I recommend. If somebody says, I'm really having a hard time working through these worksheets, I say, okay, then hand the worksheets to someone else, have them ask you the questions. You can reply and think it through verbally, and that might make it easier on you. So if you haven't taken one of my classes or read my book or joined the Starship, then you may not know that my classes are full of worksheets. I keep mentioning these worksheets because those are the backbone of my class. So while on Periscope and in my podcast, I teach makers about setting goals, about sharing their work, about becoming more profitable. In a class, the difference between Periscope and podcast, my class, is I'm not just talking about the theory of it, I make it all about you. So whether my class is online or in person, it's all about you and applying it to your business. So I do not teach theory. I focus on you finding the execution in your own business so that you take everything you learn and you actually know what your plan of attack is in your business. So the other way of saying this is my workshops force you into some self-reflection. Now, for some people, this is the first time they've ever reflected on these aspects of their business. And for other people, they've started to think it through. They just need some help asking the right questions. So my workshops force you to take what you've learned and apply it to your own thing. It's self-reflection, right? Turning it around, making it apply to your own thing. Because, and here's how this can be applied to you right now, wherever you are in your business, reflecting on what you want and how you want to go about getting it ensures that you don't get sucked into doing things that other people are doing just because other people are doing it or because other people think you should do it. So it keeps you on the right path to a business you want. So whether you take my classes or you take someone else's classes, I want you to remember your self-reflection is a superpower. You can use that to take anything you're learning, any book you're reading, any class you're attending, any podcast you're listening to, and ask, how can I apply this to myself right now? Ponder it, write about it, think about it, and then apply it. Okay, so self-reflection is a superpower in your business because it keeps you on the path towards your best business. Because it's very easy to get distracted by what other people are doing or by what other people think you should be doing. Super important to focus on what you want and what you want to be doing. So that's lesson 2, self-reflection is a superpower. Lesson 3, this big one. I want you to listen. You can do anything as an introvert. Okay, introversion, well, Beth says an introversion isn't a label you slap on yourself that then limits what you're capable of doing. It's simply a way of realizing that you have these superpowers that you share with other people who are similar to you, and you're not like a freak for needing to be by yourself to fill up your wells of energy. So this, you can do anything as an introvert. This is not just from the book. This is also from my own life. So in the book, the author guides you through several tasks that might be hard for introverts, like networking, connecting online, even expanding your business by becoming a leader to your people, the people who are going to love and benefit from the thing that you make or sell. And I do want to say this. So the book is it seems pretty aimed at people who have service-based businesses or who are like consultants, but you can apply everything in any book to your own business through self-reflection. So that is the one thing when I was reading this book that I realized is that it is not aimed at makers and crafters. It's aimed at people who have to like sell their products or services or consulting. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But she talks about expanding by becoming a leader to your people. And as I was reading the chapter about expanding, which by the way, you could apply to your own business, I realized that what she's describing is kind of what I've done over the last couple of years. But if I read this chapter 5 years ago, I would have had a really hard time believing it. I would have not really believed that what she was saying was possible for me. That's why I love that it's in a book aimed at introverts, because I think a lot of introverts have the same combination of fear and belief that's holding you back by thinking that your introversion, the fact that you don't get energy by being with other people is holding you back from doing things in a bigger way and with more people. So for a long time, for years, and keep in mind, I started my first business in 2006, and this is even in college and high school, I held myself back because I operated with the belief that my own desire to not be seen and to not be the center of attention was going to keep my business small and tiny and with just a few people because I didn't want to be in front of a lot of people. And I thought that it would always just make enough money, like not very much, not too much, just enough, because I didn't really want to be seen and I didn't want to be the center of attention. And I thought that's the only way to have a big business. So I thought that the only people who make these really big businesses that have whatever for you is a definition of success, right? So for me, that meant they worked for themselves, they had freedom and independence, they could travel, they made enough money to support their family and go on fun adventures. I thought that only those people that had that kind of business, I thought that they had to love being around people. They loved being the center of attention. They were big, like, hey, everybody, look at me kind of people. And I know that's just not me. That is just not who I am. But what changed and how I was able to grow my business is I asked myself one thing. In other words, I questioned the facts. Instead of assuming it was just a fact of life that only people who are gregarious and outgoing and extroverted can have successful businesses, I asked the question, is this always true? This is a really good question to ask yourself whenever you find yourself with a belief about something that's possible or not possible in your business or your life or your relationships. Is this always true? And for me, the answer is no. I actually do know some people who are introverted and have really awesome businesses that I admire. Okay, so then the next question is, what would it look like if I honor my introversion and I grew my business? What are the ways I could do that would honor my introversion and grow my business? It was that last question that helped me find a way through and helped me decide what I will do and what I won't do, and has helped me really grow my business in the last 2 years, all without wearing down my energy or trying to be somebody who I'm not. So I want you to think about this for yourself. Now, first, I certainly do not have this figured out. I am not like the expert in how to do this. I'm always learning more, both tactically about growing my business and about how to manage my energy and not wear myself out. I feel like I'm learning more and also improving and figuring and failing. That's the way you learn and improve, is by getting it wrong and failing and then trying something else and figuring out what works. But I'm able to do it by asking the question, how could this work? How could I honor my introversion and grow my business? What are some of the options? So now it's time for you to do a little self-reflection and apply this to you and your business. You know how I love for you to do that. First, I want you to think about what has seemed too big or scary or extroverted for you to do. You can make a list. And then I want you to look at what are the things you really want to do. So not just something you see other people doing that you think you should do, but what do you really want to do? So for example, if it seems way too extroverted for you to do a podcast or a Periscope, ask yourself, do I even want to? And why do I want to do it? Right? So just because I podcast in Periscope or someone else in your industry podcasts in Periscope just doesn't mean that's right for you. So you might not do it because it's too extroverted, but you also might not be doing it because you just don't want to. The benefits aren't something you're interested in. So if it is something you want to do, then I want you to ask yourself, how can you do this in a way that works for you? And I want you to spend 5 to 10 minutes and list all ideas, even crazy ones. So the first question is, what has seemed too big or too scary or too extroverted for you to do? And then of those things that you truly want to do, or at least you want to try and want to see if you like it, spend 5 to 10 minutes and list ideas for how can you do this in a way that works for you. Now, way that works for you means with your introversion, with your schedule, with your small children at home, or with your day job, or with your sickly dog, like whatever your life situation is, the key to building your business exactly where you are is to realize, A, it's possible. Other people are doing it in similar situations. And then B, how can I do it in a way that works for me? That's the key. All right. So how can you do whatever it is you want to do in a way that works for you? So knowing that you can do anything goes right along with remembering what we talked about in lesson 1, which is that the key to succeeding as an introvert is managing your energy. That means taking breaks, And by taking breaks, I mean in a small way, like remembering to eat lunch, and also in a big way, like taking a couple days off after you do a giant craft show or you go to a conference, or you do anything that's very extroverting. It also means building in times for you to be alone and times for you to self-reflect and times for you to think about the big picture, which introverts tend to love to do, and times for you to do any of the things that fill you up. So whether that's reading or taking baths or doing your art, making time to do the things that fill you up is as important as doing the actions that move your business forward. Because failing to honor your introversion and take time alone to fill up your wells of energy, if you fail to do that and you just do things to grow your business, that has a time limit. You're only going to be able to do that for so long before you burn out or get tired or hate it. And I have seen people do this. I've seen people build awesome businesses that then they hated because they had not taken into account who they were and the time they needed. So take the time to fill up your wells and also schedule extroverting things in a way that don't leave you drained. All right, so those are the 3 lessons. Your introversion is a superpower. The key is managing your energy, and you can do anything as an introvert. You just ask yourself the question, how can I do this in a way that works for me? If you're an introvert, I hope that today's episode has helped you see some new ways you can work and still honor who you really are. You do not need to become somebody totally different. Hope that's the main lesson you take away from it. And I want you to remember, you can find a link to everything that I mentioned, including the book, The Introvert Entrepreneur, including a link to all the past introvert podcast and blog posts I've done throughout the years. And you can enter to win a copy of The Introvert Entrepreneur at taraswiger.com/podcast107. It's where all the links will be. And if you scroll down, you'll find the form to fill out. And I will then contact the winner. So you need to do that by May 24th, 2016. I will contact the winner. I'm going to just randomly pull a name. And I'll email you directly to get your address so I can send you a copy of the book. And just so you guys know, this isn't related to anything I'm selling. I'm not like planning a class on introversion. I mean, right now, as I record this, I just really enjoyed the book. This comes up all the time with my work with clients and in the Starship. So I wanted you guys to know it's okay to be an introvert and to build a business. Just wanted to talk about that. But when you sign up to win, you'll also be given all of the subscriber bonuses, which include worksheets and transcripts to podcasts, including this one, if you'd rather read the transcript than listen to the podcast episode again. And you'll get my weekly lessons every week. So thank you so much for listening, and I wish you a very enthusiastic, introverted, alone time-filled day. Thanks so much for watching. You can get weekly lessons like this in your inbox, along with access to worksheets and checklists and transcripts from all the podcast episodes when you sign up below. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and YouTube will notify you when there's a new video. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. If you do, be sure to say hello or leave a comment below the video to let me know you're there. Thank you so much for watching, and have a very enthusiastic day.